So on Thursday, unfortunately, we were informed that Terry Corbrand had out-of-state personal business to attend to and couldn't be with us today. But we were fortunate that David Norton was available to speak with us today, and he is running to be Pawtucket's next mayor. So thank you, David. David is an Army veteran, a teacher, and a fierce fighter for Pawtucket residents. He fought the billionaires to keep the Pawsox in Pawtucket and helped to organize the opposition to the closure of a Memorial Hospital. Welcome, Dave.
Just to make sure everybody knows what I'm running for, in case you forget. Whoops. All right, so my name is David Norton, and I'm running for the mayor of Pawtucket. Are there any French speakers in the audience today? Great. Bonjour. Okay, so I'm a little bit nervous, and when I get nervous in public speaking, I like to go into teacher mode, right? So, répétez après moi. Bonjour. Bonjour. Once more. Bonjour. Bonjour. Thank you. Merci beaucoup. Okay. I'm going to switch to a little language mixture now. So, Sugi no wa Spaingo. Buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días. Buenos días. Gracias. Bon dia. Bon dia. Bon dia. Bon dia. Obrigado, amigos. Okay, so was anyone here injured by us speaking another language? Was anyone killed? No, right? Okay, so these are languages spoken in Pawtucket by a large percentage of the population, right? You've got French, you've got Portuguese, and you've got Cape Verdean Creole, and you've got Spanish, among many other languages. There are probably 5 main languages. Not probably, there are 5 main languages in Pawtucket. And we spoke 3 of them, and now I'm speaking one of them to you. So I feel it's necessary in Pawtucket, which is a multicultural community, to promote and value our culture and our language. And I think that that is very difficult in the city of Pawtucket because the voters who elect our leaders in Pawtucket are mostly white, older folks who have very conservative values. You know, they're lifelong residents of Pawtucket. They have a very narrow view of speaking languages. And for example, this lawyer from New York. Has everybody seen that video on Facebook? Right, so this guy's yelling at Spanish speakers for speaking Spanish. And there's a lot of that going on in Pawtucket, even though Pawtucket is probably less than 50% white. So we've got these issues, and I just wanted to make sure everybody knows that I value language and culture. Everyone's language and culture. And I'm not afraid to speak it, and I don't think anybody in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, or in the world should be afraid to speak another language in public. So my daughter was born in Japan. I lived in Japan for 10 years. So I have a lot of international experience. I lived in Germany, I lived in Denmark, I lived in Chile for a short time. So my wife is Japanese. She's very Japanese, right? We moved here about 7 years ago. My daughter was born in Japan. So my wife and daughter speak another language to each other in public. And, you know, so this makes it very personal for me. And it's not as personal for many of the people who are monolingual. They only speak English in Pawtucket. So I just wanted to make sure that everybody understood that Pawtucket is actually a very conservative place politically because of the people who hold power. And the people who don't really have enough power are the immigrants from Cabo Verde, the immigrants from Latin America who speak Spanish, immigrants from the Azores, Portugal, right? So I think it's important to recognize that. Okay, so can anyone here guess the percentage of non-native English speakers in Pawtucket?
30%?
65%.
Nobody knows because the right? You got this census going on, right? And nobody wants to fill it out because they're scared. And even back in 2010, which I do have data on, it pegs it at probably 50%. But I think it's likely more. And there's probably a bigger Cape Verdean population in Pawtucket than we realize. But they're undercounted because they're a very specific cultural group. And are they white? Are they black? They're all different shades, right? And some of them, I believe when they're filling out the census, they might check Hispanic. I've heard this before anyway. So we don't really have a good count on the minorities in Pawtucket. And that's going to get a lot worse. And that affects us statewide, right? Because it affects the funding that we get. So this is not only important for Pawtucket, which is, I think, the 4th largest city. It's a major city in Rhode Island. So I know that a few people here are from Pawtucket that I recognize, but most of you have indicated to me that you can't vote for me, and you're sorry about that. But that's okay, because you can support me. I've got my email tablet set up in the back if anybody wants to join my email list, so you can come on down to Pawtucket, speak some French, learn some Cape Verdean language, and so on and so forth. Okay, next. So now I would like to highlight one major part of my political platform for change as a candidate for mayor of Pawtucket. If I'm elected mayor of Pawtucket, and within the first 100 days of my administration, I will issue an executive order, if necessary, and I'm 99% sure it's going to be necessary, to include lawful permanent residents. Now, does everybody know what permanent residents are as opposed to citizens and temporary residents?
No.
No. So a permanent resident is someone in the United States of America that has permission to live here 10 years in a row. And if they violate immigration law or other laws, they might put that in jeopardy when they renew it after that 10-year period. But they can't vote, right? And city hiring practices, as far as I know, I've contacted Pawtucket City Hall and I've asked them specifically about hiring police and fire, and I've yet to get an answer back, right? They have 10 business days to answer me back. But anyway, I will include lawful permanent residents in application for employment for any city jobs, and specifically for police and fire. Because as you know, if you're on Facebook or if you're on some sort of social media, almost every day we have a run-in with minorities and the police. And more often than not, the police officer is white, doesn't speak the language, or doesn't relate to the person that they're arresting, abusing, or shooting. So I think it's very important that we have fair hiring practices, and we open it up to the permanent residents. Because as I said, you know, Pawtucket's an immigrant community where we speak a lot of languages. We speak a lot of languages because the people are coming from other places. So many of these people who have the ability to speak 2 or 3 languages are not able to get employment in the fire department and the police department, right? So I would open it up to lawful permanent residents, which would expand the pool of people who speak other languages and have different skin colors and especially different perspectives on what it's like to exist in the United States. So I would do that to value our linguistic and cultural diversity and recognize that. And I think that we must take proactive and positive measures in city hiring practices that reflect the necessity of communication, right? I think this is very important. So I will direct all departments of the city to include in any employment applications and assessments incentives and rewards that favor candidates who are able to pass language assessment tests, right? So you'll have Spanish, you'll have Portuguese, you'll have French, and you'll have Cape Verdean Creole. So this is an incentive for people to join the police department, the fire department, and all the other city departments, which are dominated by white people that have been lifelong residents in the city of Pawtucket. And I believe that their perspective is a little bit narrow and doesn't reflect the population of Pawtucket. So I would do that with the 5 largest language groups, which are English, Cape Verdean Creole, Spanish, Portuguese, and French. So candidate employees in all city departments will have the option to take language proficiency tests and may get incentive pay based on how they score on those proficiency tests. And we'll also add 4 points for each language, as we do already in Pawtucket for police and fire. If they live within the city, they get 4 extra points. So a candidate could potentially get, a Cape Verdean Creole speaking candidate could potentially get 12 points, right? Because Cape Verdean Creole is based on Portuguese. So they can speak Portuguese, Creole, and Portuguese and Creole are very close to Spanish. So you've got 3 languages there that could be used. Okay, so what's next? So I'll have a closing statement now. I'm running for mayor of Pawtucket because we need change and we need to pursue progressive goals in the city. I hope to be able to translate and reconcile working class goals with other political and economic groups, as I've said. So Pawtucket is a working class community, and it has been since the Industrial Revolution, right? And you've got a lot of people there that are kind of Trump supporters, and they don't want other people speaking other languages, right? They don't want the immigrant population to really become part of the city in a way that they share power. So I'd like to work on reconciling and translating these goals to each group in Pawtucket, which is fairly segregated. So on the social front, I hope to unite the immigrant community as a political force, of course, because now what I'm saying is going to anger a lot of the likely voters in Pawtucket, the older, whiter, more conservative folks that have been lifelong residents. So I really need the support of the immigrant community to win this election. So I would hope to unite the immigrant community as a political force and help the older, whiter, lifelong residents in Pawtucket understand the value of uniting with and understanding our very diverse and dynamic community. I would hope to heal the wounds that currently divide us nationally, and we can feel them locally also with, you know, the orange man, 45. I won't call him, I won't say that word. So I would hope to heal those wounds that are preventing us from social and economic progress. We're going backwards, right? We see this video of this lawyer berating people for speaking Spanish, and we see lots of police officers and police encounters with minorities that have gone really, really badly. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit and I'm going to explain to you my unifying social, political, and economic concept. Right? And I've used this in a campaign before. I ran in the special election for state senate, and I lost pretty badly, right? But I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. Because I think that we need to put hospitals before stadiums. And anybody that knows anything about Pawtucket knows that we've been pursuing a taxpayer-funded stadium, and the mayor of Pawtucket especially has been fighting as hard as he possibly can to get this taxpayer-funded stadium built. And he's allowed Memorial Hospital to slip away. So my unifying social, political, and economic concept is hospitals before stadiums. And you can see the little hashtag that I put down there. And I'm not giving up on this concept, no matter what happens. Because it's very important. It's a very important political message that speaks to income inequality. It speaks to the healthcare issues that we're having right now. It speaks to corporate welfare. It speaks to cronyism. And it speaks to our basic sense as human beings of what is right and what is wrong. So I want to just say that this concept is not an oversimplification. I've been working on both of these issues for years. And these Pawtucket guys, right, they keep coming back. And they're never going to go away unless I'm elected mayor and I tell them no. And I will tell them no, absolutely. So this concept, I believe, it cuts across age, ethnicity, language, culture, and it can start as a starting point for progressive change in the city of Pawtucket. Hospitals before stadiums, for me, is the essence of what it means to be progressive. Thank you. Yes.
Hi, Susan Razzie again.
Susan.
I've had a conversation with our police chief in Newport, and it was referring to monies we were getting, which is not the story. But our conversation was, my view is that the police need to work very closely with the immigrant population if they want to. We need to work better with our immigrant population. And he agreed with me and said that they would not do ICE's job, because that was part of the money coming in, might have had that string. It is my view that the immigrant population is obviously very underheard. I'm sorry I can't vote for you, but I think people need to know that what your feelings are and what you would do to help bridge the gap between the immigrant population that cannot speak English and so forth and are scared. To take the police department and other socials that work hand in hand with these groups instead of trying to, anyway, as mayor of Pawtucket, if you're really, how would you handle that problem and how would you solve it?
Well, the way I'm looking at handling the problem with something that I have the power to do is to issue an executive order changing the hiring practices.
Yeah, I heard that part, but there's also, mistrust. There's a lot of mistrust between the immigrant population and the police. I think that's my core question is how do you hope to bridge that gap?
Well, that's a very good question. It will be extremely difficult because there is, an undocumented population in the city of Pawtucket. And I know a lot of undocumented people in the city of Pawtucket, and I've heard from them. And one of the things that I could do, I suppose, is declare Pawtucket a sanctuary city. But there's a danger in that, right? Because then you become a target. And I've had undocumented people actually tell me they don't want Pawtucket to be declared a sanctuary city because then they're going to be targeted. But I would direct the police chief and all of the police officers to not cooperate with ICE at all. And I would hope to hire a cultural liaison if there isn't one person there able to do it now, with the hiring executive order that I'm putting out, it would probably take a couple of years, or many years, to have adequate representation on the police force. But you make a very good point. Now, if we had a Cape Verdean, Spanish, and Portuguese speaker that's a police officer in the city of Pawtucket, and he goes knocking on your door, and the people, I've knocked on many doors in the city of Pawtucket, and look at me, right? I look like I'm an ICE agent. So people run away and hide, and I gotta catch them at the supermarket and tell them, you know, I'm cool, and that's why I you know, try to speak other languages, and I'm studying a couple of languages now. I think it's very important that we have someone, and especially the mayor, the leader of the city, speaking their language and saying, hey, you know, tranquilo, don't worry about it. The ICE is not going to come knocking on your door as far as I can help it, and as far as my police department can help it. That is not going to be something that they are doing. And I will hold community meetings all over Pawtucket, and this has already been suggested to me by someone in the Cape Verdean, many people in the Cape Verdean community, is to have community meetings where Cape Verdeans actually come to the meeting. And we can have a translator, and I'm part of the Cape Verdean American Community Development Center in Pawtucket. And we've actually had a meeting with the mayor and the police chief, and I asked the mayor a couple of questions at this meeting. I was very, very dissatisfied with what he said. And the last point I'd like to make is that we have legislators who claim to be Democrats in the state of Rhode Island and in the city of Pawtucket who have been primary sponsors of awful, awful statewide ICE legislation. And this is one of the things that motivated me to become involved again in the community, the immigrant community. I used to be a citizenship teacher and, of course, an ESL teacher, and I taught in Providence, Central Falls, and Pawtucket. So I definitely hear your concern, and that is one of my main concerns, and that's why I wanted to bring this up here today. But I've got a lot of other parts to my platform, of course. I'm concerned about a lot more than just this issue, and if you want to talk to me after, or if you want to take my business card, and my website's on there, telephone number, if you want to learn more, just ask. Thank you.